Well, good morning, and welcome to the final chapter and epilogue to my January 2014 travel blog. Today I'm greeting you from my home in frigid Oakville, Missouri, in the southernmost regions of South St. Louis County, wearing a flannel shirt. I'm just a few days removed from those zany folks in Florida who had to endure a few hours last Friday morning where the temperature dropped below 50 degrees. And even found temperatures in the lower 60s over the weekend to be objectionable. I think we have a good lesson in perspective here, don't you? On Wednesday, I drove straight through from Atlanta to St. Louis. I had originally planned to visit Stone Mountain in Atlanta, but I discovered the park didn't open until 10 a.m. And I also discovered the temperatures were in the mid-teens in Atlanta, and they weren't expected to get much over 20 for that day. Not a good idea to spend a day in an outdoor park. I had also planned to travel northeast out of Atlanta and link up with Interstate 40 and drive that through the Smoky Mountains for the views. But I also found out that Tuesday night it had snowed a little bit in the Smoky Mountains, apparently just a dusting, but I was a little afraid. I didn't think driving through mountain passes with snow on the ground or the residual of snows was probably such a good idea. So I opted to just drive straight through to St. Louis. But let's step back a little bit. On Tuesday morning, let's talk about Tuesday morning. I left the Tampa area, and rather than drive up the interstate I-75 to Atlanta, I took Old Highway 19. 19 travels out of the Tampa area within a stone's throw of the Gulf of Mexico. You travel through countless little tourist towns, Tarpon Springs, Newport Richey, Palm Harbor, many others. There's tall hotels off to my left bordering the beach, and every possible sort of tourist trap business off to my right to fulfill the vacationer's needs for flip-flops and suntan oil and cheap trinkets to take home as gifts or souvenirs. There were countless stoplights along that journey. And if I caught any one of them green, I can't remember what it was. It took me better part of an hour to travel this 30-mile stretch, if not even a little bit longer than that. But then again, if I was in a hurry, I guess I would have gone and taken I-75, wouldn't I? I was here to look at Americana, and there I saw it. Once the highway got a little bit north, it veered away from the coastline, and the density of the hotels and shops dropped off dramatically. And by the time I was a half an hour away from the beach, the flavor of the businesses changed as well. Along the coastline, chains and franchises dominated. The hotels were Holiday Inn Express, Marriott, and other lodgings of this type. The restaurants were Subways and Hardee's and McDonald's. They all had the prime spots. But once we got away from the beach area and a little bit inland, I found that historical Americana returned. And that's what I was looking for. Oh, there were all sorts of businesses, and a lot of the businesses along the way, the locally owned businesses, were service-oriented businesses. Repair shops, used car dealers. Even here in the Florida Outback, most of the restaurants were indeed franchises. There were signs of the days gone by. There were a significant, and I use that term significant, number of empty buildings where locally owned restaurants and other businesses used to be. Highway 19 is pretty well traveled. There were a lot of 18-wheelers, probably either avoiding the interstate or having a destination being closer to their destination through Highway 19. It is a divided highway, limited access, 4-lane with divided. I saw an awful lot of RVs on Highway 19, a disproportionate number of RVs on Highway 19. And I think, good reason, the speed limit here is 65, and there's not as many people in a big hurry traveling 80 miles as they go by you. I think this probably also would be a more comfortable drive for someone, perhaps a novice, driving a large RV, perhaps towing a car behind them. I also saw a lot of evidence of decay along Highway 19. There were lots of pawn shops, lots of pawn shops and gold buyers, lots of them. There's still a good number of small stucco style motels along Highway 19. Some of them still in business, but I bet you for every one that was in business, there were a half a dozen of them that were closed, some of those in bad disrepair and ready to collapse. I remember trips in my youth, riding in the back seat of my dad's car, where there were dozens of produce stands along the way competing for your business. I don't recall seeing more than two. I passed one in a small town, on a corner in a small town, and I decided to pass that one by and didn't see another one for a long time. I did run across one more, stopped there and bought half a bushel of oranges to bring home to my neighbors and friends. But I don't believe I saw another single produce stand other than those two. My overall impression is that there was much more decay and poverty along this secondary road in Florida than what I saw on the secondary roads in Alabama and Mississippi that I drove on. It might have something to do with the fact that the construction, the roads in Alabama and Mississippi were newer construction. Highway 19 that I was on down here in Florida was a road of the past, and it showed. I hope that commerce and those businesses just kind of moved a little bit east to the I-75 corridor. Don't know. Well, this was Highway 19 all through Florida up until I got to Interstate 10 near Tallahassee and crossed over Interstate 10. I guess things changed there. Everything seemed cleaner. Everything seemed more in working order, if you will. It was just a different impression up there. And then once I got into Georgia, things changed again. Yes, the speed limit remained 65. But as you approached any little small village, which may have consisted of one farmhouse, or even a lot of crossroads, there were long stretches where the speed limit dropped down to 55. And along with the speed limit dropping down to 55, almost every spot you were sure to see a trooper and a radar gun. It seemed to me that a large part of the commerce down in southern Georgia revolved around speeding fines. Well, this went on and on and on, and I thought, well, I think I'm pushing my luck here. Although I was observing the speed limit and watching, I decided just to turn right, take a hard right and get back to the interstate, which I did. And I took that interstate up and stayed in the southern suburbs of Atlanta for the night. And as I mentioned earlier, weather conditions caused me to cancel a couple of side trips that I had planned. And since home was the next stop, I got up early on Wednesday morning. 7:30 I was on the road. And I can't fail to mention here how much I hate traffic in Atlanta. I've been through Atlanta before. I've stayed in Atlanta before on business. And I just cannot remember a time when this was not some of the most god-awful traffic I've ever encountered. Even leaving at 7:30 a.m., there was slow rush hour traffic backups all the way from where I got on the highway to the heart of the city. It took me almost an hour and a half to travel that small section of road to get to the central heart of Atlanta. Once I got there, then things broke loose because the commuting came from the north to the south, and I was able to look over in the other lane and see the unhappy eyes of the Atlanta commuters. Once outside of the Atlanta metro area, I engaged Warp Drive, and I flew through Chattanooga, Nashville, Paducah, and connected with I-57 in southern Illinois. But I decided rather than to follow the interstate north up to 64 and take that west to St. Louis, I decided to keep in the spirit of my travel and I exited at Highway 13 at Marion, Illinois, to catch Highway 3 and to take in the scenery on the way home. I traveled through Marion and Carbondale, and I have not been through those two cities for many a year. And wow, both of these towns seem to be thriving, at least along Highway 13. Both look very modern and urban looking. But in contrast, once I reached Highway 3 and took it north, this was throwback time. There were lots of farms and rolling landscapes, long stretches of hilly two-lane roads surrounded by woods. Soon the Mississippi River was off to my left, a welcome reminder that I was almost home. Driving through Chester, Illinois was like taking a trip back in time. Although there were McDonald's and other franchise businesses there, there were still lots of small locally owned businesses along Main Street. Saw a lot of Lutheran churches, which was a different breed than seeing all the different variations of Southern Baptist churches back in Florida and Georgia and Tennessee and everywhere else. Soon I was taking all of those silly twists and turns through the heart of Redbud, Illinois, that Highway 3 takes, another town that has been wounded but not destroyed by time. Next there was Waterloo, Columbia, the JB Bridge, and I was home. In reflection, I had a most wonderful visit with my daughter, her boyfriend, my stepdaughter, her husband, my grandson Max. That was the purpose of my trip, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. But I can hope that you can also tell from my blogs that I also thoroughly enjoyed the trip. I've heard it said that life is a journey. And I've heard it said that it is indeed the journey that should be embraced, not the destination. Perhaps my short trip here is indeed a metaphor for that point of view. I'm very glad that I did not look down over Tennessee and Mississippi and Alabama, northern Florida, Georgia, and southern Illinois out of an airplane window as I flew over them. I enjoyed the journey. I have plans for the rest of my day today. Nothing as dramatic as that trip to Florida. But I think I'm going to do my best today to enjoy the journey and not to overlook the beauty around me, not to overlook the people around me. And I hope you choose to do the same. Thanks for watching. Look for more of these reflections in the late spring when I drive up to Mount Rushmore and then west into Yellowstone. Hope to see you then. Bye-bye for now. Aloha.